Hello from the 51st International Film Festival for Children and Youth. I'm here with Vonnie von Helmolt and Jensen Carr, producers of the documentary Too Much, which is screened within the section documentary films. So, hello and welcome. First question, very unusual. How do you feel about Zlín, Czech Republic?
Well, we've only been here for 24 hours, but we love it. It's beautiful. I wasn't expecting the hills and the greenery and the architecture and the warmth of the people. I'm thrilled to be here.
Oh, we're having a fantastic time. It's been great. Everything.
You've just came from the screening, so how do you feel about it?
We were really happy with the screening. Everybody asked, you can usually tell how people feel by the questions that they ask, and the questions were really good, and they showed that people had thought not just about what they saw on the screen, but about the process of making the film, and they were interested in what happened to the girls after. So it was very satisfying. It felt like people really appreciated the film. Merritt, what did you think?
Well, when the screening started, I had one moment of alarm because all these boys started flooding into the screening, and because the film is about the city that we live in has one of the best ballet schools in the world. But we follow the girls, and so I wasn't sure how all those boys would like it, but they stayed. I mean, a lot of people asked, "What about the boys?" And we said, "Well, that's the next film." But it was terrific. It was terrific. I think because ultimately it's all about the dream. Yes. And that's a universal experience because, as we grow up, we all have our dreams. And I think the boys related, really well to that. So it went well.
Thanks. So, and how about at other festivals? Do you travel a lot with this documentary?
Actually, the first festival I traveled to was the one that I met you at Seoul. But I did get to go to Cannes. It screened at Cannes, and I think because of that, other festival programmers came and started to ask it. And I think what was interesting for us is that we hadn't realized that there were festivals like Zlín that were focusing on youth and children. And now that we know that, the film is being screened so many places. I mean, there's Zlín. It's also screening exactly at the same time in China. There's a Chinese film festival for youth and children. It's happening now. We sent our little Chinese dancer, Carmen, to China. No, that was Wan Yung. That's the Korean girl, but we also have a little girl who speaks Chinese, and so we thought it would be good for her to go. And so she's now in China representing the film. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to see, as Merritt said, how the film can cross languages because the experience is the same. Did you have anything to add?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you about documentary films in general. What do you think? Do you think they have future? Because these days in the Czech Republic there is a big boom of documentary films releasing into cinema, which wasn't before. So do you think they have still future?
The last few years in Canada, some of the highest grossing films at the box office have been documentaries. And that's changed everything. Suddenly, highest grossing Canadian films, sorry. I think there's a lot more interest. Distributors are showing a lot more interest in taking on theatrical documentaries. I think that audiences love documentary. And around the world, there are really fantastic documentaries being made. And I think the other thing that's really interesting right now is that cinema audience for documentaries is a young audience. So that's getting a lot of attention as well. So in Canada and North America, things are very optimistic. It's still difficult to pull together the financing. In particular in Canada, much of the financing is triggered by television. So people are having to find creative ways to, maybe make a television version and also make a theatrical version or figure that out. But still, we're working it out.
And I just wanted to add that, for example, Too Much screened in theaters, cinemas, in 60 cinemas across the country at the same time, which is, I think, unheard of for a Canadian documentary film. So that was very exciting.
And Vonnie, you produced dance feature drama, Dracula, Pages from a Virgin's Diary, then a dance special. What attracts you so much about music-related documentaries or films?
Like everything in life, you fall into things. You're in the right place at the right time. Someone comes to you with an idea, you see something and it triggers because you're in that spot. So what happened is I had friends who were dancers and who was a choreographer, and she wanted to make a dance film, and she knew that I was a film producer, so she asked me if I would produce her film. And I did, and working with dancers is such a joy. They are not like actors. Actors are wonderful and they are brilliant, but dancers are wonderful, brilliant, and giving. And they don't require stunt doubles. They do all their own stuff. They'll do it over and over. And you end up with something very magical because dance is such a magic. And because dance is so visual, it actually translates, depending on how you shoot it, it translates really well to film. So with Dracula, I had seen the ballet, and I thought, this could be very good on film. And then I hired Guy Madden to do it, and Guy said, no, I hate ballet. I don't want to do ballet. And I said, well, come and see the ballet. See what you think. And he saw it, and he went, oh, it's very sexy. I went, yes. And he said, I'll do it. So that's how we got started, really. And I love working with dancers. And it's so satisfying because in the end you have this really beautiful thing. And the other thing is, it's timeless. We can look at Dracula, we can look at Too Much. 10, 20, 30 years from now, it will still be true. An audience will still relate. So I love that too about ballet.
So, and what are your plans? You told me that you are gonna shoot a documentary about boys. Yeah, we have. Yeah, you have.
Yes. We've already shot it, and today they asked us whether we were going to do a film about the boys. What about the boys? And we said yes, we have, and it exists. And if the festival wishes to bring it next year, then yes, then we'd be happy. And it's called Ballet High. So it's the dancers are older. They're teenagers. So we like it.
So, and now we are at the Children's Festival. So I'm gonna ask you some questions, some tricky questions related to your childhood. So, could you tell me what was your favorite, for example, children's movie or character?
Oh, I know. Thinking.
What do you think?
Which film have you seen as first? Do you have any memory?
I have. After you.
Well, the most traumatic film I ever saw was Bambi. I think it traumatized me for years. Yeah. I held on to my mother very close after that. I actually didn't make much of a distinction between children's films and films. I watched films every day. When I was growing up at 6 o'clock, they showed a movie. And faithfully, every day at 6 o'clock, I would watch that movie. And it was like an education in film. It was everything from, Hitchcock to, anyway, I watched them all. So I didn't really make a distinction between children's films and other films, except for Bambi, maybe. There weren't a lot of children's films released other than The Wizard of Oz and things like that at that time. Anyway, sorry.
That's okay. That's good. And I have to say that the first film I saw, and again, it was a trauma, this is going to date me, was Lassie Come Home. And when Lassie got lost, my mother had to take me out of the theater because I was crying so loudly. Lassie's gone. She's going to die. So it was again very traumatic. But I have to say that my favorite films as about a 10 or 12-year-old, again, this is going to date me, were the Doris Day films, like Calamity Jane. I loved Calamity Jane. I wanted to be Doris Day, and so that was my formative film.
And do you have time to watch now these days children's films? Do you think they are different from the ones from the past, or do you think the children in general are different from you?
You say, very.
Well, I have 4 children, so I watch a lot of children's films. I watch children's films all the time. I mean, the animation is interesting because most of the animation, a lot of it works on an adult level and on a child level very well. And I think children today are much more sophisticated viewers. I think that they're much more media literate, and there are lots of changes in things like technology and the style of the cutting and things like that. But in the way they haven't changed is everybody always wants a good story, and that never changes. And a good story today will work tomorrow. It'll work forever. I think the only other thing I wanted to say is I think it's really interesting, some of the films that have been made, like Whale Rider, I took my children to see that film. Wonderful, wonderful films. Yeah. Yeah, and I took my kids to see those films, and they were really wonderful experiences because they provoked a lot of discussion and understanding, which I thought was great. And I think the international quality of cinema right now is a really healthy thing. We see much more cinema from all over the world in Canada than we ever did when I was growing up. Mm-hmm. So, and as a result, I think that too makes children's audiences a much more sophisticated audience because they get a window into a very large global reality that, in other times in history, we didn't have that exposure to. So, anyway.
The only thing I would say is a negative in terms of children now and children when I was growing up, or myself as a child, is that I think they are more hardened to violence. And I think they're expecting more shocks per minute. Sort of like adrenaline, their adrenaline need is higher. And so sometimes I think that the need to keep their attention, they're not patient enough to wait for the payoff, to get into the story. That's what I like about theater as opposed to television. They're in the theater, they're sitting there, they basically have to just go at the speed that the movie is, where they can't change the channel. And so that's what I love about cinema for children.
So, thank you very much for coming to Zlín all the way from Canada, and hopefully we will see next movie Ballet High next year, and we will have the opportunity to see those 2 very nice girls again. So thank you very much, and see you next year maybe.
Thank you so much for the invitation. We love being here.
It's been a real pleasure and a privilege. Thanks.